Greetings and welcome to Education in Focus, powered by Chalkboard News. I'm Dan McCaleb, Vice President of News and Content at the Franklin News Foundation, which publishes chalkboardnews.com. Chalkboard News is a website dedicated to issues related to K-12 education, and its editor, Brendan Clary, as he does every week, joins me today to discuss some of those issues. How are you, Brendan?
I'm doing well, Dan. How about you?
I am doing well. There's a legal battle going on in the state of Michigan. It's played out in some other states in recent years, but it's regarding the Blaine Amendment and the use of taxpayer funds for school choice initiatives, for example, allowing parents to send their children to private schools, in some cases religious schools, using taxpayer dollars. In those instances, the taxpayer dollars follow the students. They don't stay with the public school system. And Michigan is not allowing those tax dollars to follow students who want to go to religious schools, but there's been lawsuits, and one of the lawsuits is currently in a federal appeals court in Michigan. What's going on here?
Yeah, so there's a, it's been a long-standing issue in Michigan. This Blaine Amendment, I think, has been around since the 1970s, if I remember correctly. It's basically it bans public money from going to private religious schools, and the critics of that say this is specifically anti-religious or anti-Catholic, that it was motivated by an anti-Catholic sort of movement to prevent public money from going to Catholic schools. And so this has taken it's kind of a different shape, I think, in recent years. I think it was the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, under the Trump administration, that allowed students' families to use a specific kind of savings account to like a tax advantaged savings account to put toward private tuition. But in Michigan, that would run afoul, they argue, in this lawsuit, that would run afoul of the Blaine Amendment. So the state of Michigan contends that, and I hope I'm doing a good job here, but the state of Michigan contends that this Blaine Amendment basically only keeps public money from going to private schools. But the Mackinac Center for Public Policy and Birch Law, who are filing this or who are representing families in this lawsuit, they basically argue that this is religious discrimination, that this this kind of targets schools and makes them choose between getting the public funds or being a religious entity, right? And so that's sort of the crux of the battle. From what I can tell, that there's sort of this question of, is this a religious discrimination issue? Is this or is this just like a, blanket, we don't use public funds for private schools, which is what the state of Michigan contends. So it's sort of a complicated, issue that goes back decades. But that's sort of the crux of it, from what I can understand.
So we're seeing these school choice conversations, these school choice battles going on in states across the country. School choice advocates say parents, pay in many states. Property taxes are the main funding option for schools. Some states have supplements to that, et cetera, et cetera. But if parents are paying property taxes to educate children in a given school district, shouldn't parents have an option to send their child to a school of their choice, particularly if their local public school is not performing very well, is failing students? So the Mackinac Center, which filed a lawsuit against the state's Blaine Amendment, is one of the agencies or one of the groups of individuals who believe that tax dollars should fund or should follow students and not be tied specifically to local public schools if parents want to make a choice on that. So I guess the question is, what's next? There was a hearing recently in a federal appeals court a district court essentially threw out the lawsuit, as I understand it. It was the Mackinac Center appealed it to the federal appeals court. They've heard arguments, and now they haven't ruled yet, though. Is that right?
I think they're awaiting that decision to see what that appeals court will say. That's you're exactly right. These families and the Mackinac Center and the Birch Law Center, they have they basically say that the Blaine Amendment violates the U.S. Constitution because it doesn't allow parents to use that savings plan for tuition, even though there are public school districts that allow you to attend even if the student's out of state. So it's out of the district, you can use that same account for that. So it's so that's what's coming next is to see what the appeals court says, and I'm not sure about the timeline there.
You never know in federal courts.
Yeah, you never know. And so we've seen a lot of different kinds of school choice measures. And so if the court were to rule in the favor of these families, that would maybe be the next sort of thing. I don't know how far that would go in Michigan currently, just because of we the legislature is majority Democrat now, and Governor Griffin Whitmer in Michigan is also a Democrat. So I don't know if school choice would have the same kind of inroads that it's made in other states this year. But that would kind of open up the state to sort of having the opportunity maybe at some point in the future for different kinds of ESAs that we've seen, sort of like starter getting into school choice legislation down the road. But right now, this has been a pretty hard stop, from my understanding of, we don't use any kind of public funds for these private schools.
So I don't know that I personally feel it shouldn't be a partisan issue, but it certainly is a partisan issue. You referenced Democrat Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Public school teacher unions generally oppose using taxpayer dollars for anything but public schools, and teachers unions generally in Michigan across the country support Democrats over Republicans. So I think that's largely why it's the partisan issue, even though everybody should be thinking about what's best for, in my opinion, what's best for the individual student. You got a minute or so to close, Brett.
Yeah, it's been interesting to just kind of covering school choice legislation and different kind of debates in state houses this year. And, there's been some Democrats who have, the left, or there's been a couple of Democrats, I think, who've left their party because of school choice issues. They're saying, parents want different education choices after the pandemic, and recovering learning and those kinds of things. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out and, how this continues to play out across the country here.
I appreciate your insight into this news story affecting students in Michigan, Brendan, but we are out of time. Listeners can keep up with this story and more related to K-12 education at chalkboardnews.com. For Brendan Clary, I am Dan McCaleb. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe.